All right, happy to have my next guest on the Sports Card Shop guest line. She's the author of a new book, Swinging into History. Have it right here. Put it on camera. It's a great book about someone. I have a feeling many will may not have heard the story or know of the subject of that book, and that's what we're going to talk about today with the author, Karen Swanson. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. Thanks.
Great book. It is a children's book, which didn't stop me from reading it because I'm just a big kid at heart anyway. And, I'm a teaching assistant that works in the special education department, Karen. So, we have these obviously in hand. I'm going to incorporate that in some fashion into our curriculum during the year. Um,
Great.
but even being a children's book, it really hit home and told the story of the subject, which is Toni Stone, the first professional women's ball player. And I was telling you before we recorded, I've heard a little bit about her, but I didn't know all the details that you did a great job sort of filling in. And I obviously learned more about her and then even, did more research and tried to learn even more about her. This isn't you're an author already, but this was not necessarily your forte, but you were inspired walking by a play that she was the subject of, which led to you writing this book. I'll let you tell kind of the story of where the light bulb sort of went on, and now we have this great book.
Great. I'm happy to do that. And it's a great book for use in school. So, especially because there's a timeline at the back. So, fifth graders are really great with this for writing book reports. So, how I got inspired to write this book was that I was literally walking down the street and saw a billboard for this new play in 2018 called Toni Stone. And I am an athlete. I played softball growing up, but I always was a little more interested in baseball. My son played baseball all through high school and was recruited for college, so I know a lot about baseball. I enjoy the game. And I was like, wait a minute. How is it possible that a woman played professional baseball? And I did not know this. I just couldn't believe it. So I bought tickets for myself and my husband and two friends that I'm like, y'all are coming to this and we're going to go see this play. And I probably annoyed everybody because I used my watch light to take notes because I was like, kids need to know about this. And that's kind of how that started. From there, there's a lot of research that goes into writing nonfiction. So, yeah, it's a picture book biography for kids, nonfiction, but it takes quite a lot of effort to make sure that everything in it is completely accurate. And I relied pretty heavily on a book by a woman named Martha Ackman called Curveball, which is really the definitive biography of Toni. She is a professor who spent, I don't even know how many years, getting Toni's story down like for adults. It's several hundred pages long, and but then also did a lot of other primary research. So that is how I was interested. And for me personally, it hit home because Toni's story is one of just absolute determination. No one wanted her to play baseball. No one. Her parents didn't want her to play. The kids, even though she was by far the best athlete, and was written up in like, St. Paul's, best athlete as a kid. The boys didn't want to be bested by a girl. Her parents didn't want her doing something that in the 1930s that's so unfeminine. And it's, I mean, no, and then when she made it, no one wanted her to play there either. So it's a story about making your own dreams come true and determination and resilience and sexual discrimination and as well as racial discrimination. And that really spoke a lot to me.
Yeah, and you make a great point in the book, and I think it's you mentioned it there too just now, right? Her own parents, for their own reasons, right, didn't really support her dream to play baseball. They probably, thought it was kind of a pipe dream in their minds, and maybe her energy could be better spent uh, in a different direction. But like you said, it's a great book, and it's a great story of determination, right? To sort of like don't want to say go against your parents, but they really weren't thrilled by that fact. She even, purchased her own baseball glove,
Yeah.
and her parents, like you just mentioned, weren't the only ones that were resistant to her playing. The male ego, it can be a fickle thing, and males in the sport did not accept her. The book illustrates some of the things she ran up against, and the difficulties. And it would have been easy probably for her at any time to like throw her glove in the closet, so to speak, and that be it. And we never know about a Toni Stone. But she persevered. She played for a while. She played, in the baseball league with the
Right.
males. It wasn't the women's version like we had with the major leagues and the Tom Hanks movie, A League of Their Own, which is a great league in itself. But it was and she was playing with male contemporaries, including the likes of Satchel Paige and Hank Aaron and Willie Mays. I'm sure those
Yeah.
guys need no introduction. I guess one of the questions I have is I had heard some rumblings about her, but I didn't know the whole story. And I hope your book leads to it, and the other book you mentioned that that's more, if you will, adult oriented. Uh, why do you think we don't know more about this? What do you is it society just kind of continuing that societal line, which is not a good one, where suppose allegedly women can't do this? Or why do you think that her story? We hear a lot of inspirational stories, along racial lines and social issues. Rosa Parks, Jackie Robinson, the list goes on and on. Why isn't this story a bigger one with Toni Stone? What do you, in your opinion, what do you think? Why is that the case?
It's a great question. Actually, no one's ever asked me that question, and I'm not sure I know exactly, but um, partly it's probably because for years and years and years, the Negro Leagues were not considered by Cooperstown to be major leagues, even though at the time it was the major league for Black players, right? So there's some of that. So there's just not enough information. There's also it is still wildly discouraged for girls to play baseball. I mean, the fact that Monet Davis pitched in the World Series, Little League World Series, and then gave up baseball. Baseball in college, they don't want girls still, even after Title IX. So I don't know that there's anybody that's like was saying, okay, she's leading the charge for making changes in baseball. So I don't know, and as you said earlier, the male ego, or people just there's very little written about Toni because of the time that it was. Also, so if Martha Ackman hadn't written that book, I would never have been able to write this book. So I think the like if you think about the Williams sisters, I'm a huge tennis fan. If you think about the Williams sisters, a lot more about that story because it unfolded in a way where the media was. And that's not the case here. She was written up many times in the Chicago Defender, but, white Americans largely aren't going to know what that is. So there are probably several things. So I don't know if that's helpful, but that's my take on it.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I think what you said rings true, right? But what I'm hoping, you know, again, you got the inspiration to write this book, walking by that billboard. Do you think maybe now with society being better, there's always room for improvement. There's a ways to go. More social media. Might you think that the general public might start to hear more about Tony Stone? Might we see a movie even? It's funny, Karen. I don't know how you feel about this. Sometimes we see them like redo movies, like just kind of a
Mm,
retake. It's almost like they're running out of ideas in Hollywood or in entertainment, right? To me,
Yeah.
this would be a great movie. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be a blockbuster. I think it could be an important movie that people would really enjoy and learn more about the history and fabric of America, of sports, of society. You think that maybe that is something that we'll see, maybe hopefully come of this?
Gosh, I don't know, but I would love to. I mean, there is a TV series. The name is escaping me at the moment, but I'll come up with it. That was basically built on the fact that a league of their own and the AAGPBL at the time was a baseball league for women, but it was only for white women. And what this TV series did a great job of actually is they had one black character. It's fictional, but they were based. What I've read about it is that they based the main character, whose name is Max, on Toni Stone, and then the two women who played on the Clowns after her, Mamie. I'm spacing on names today. Sorry, Peanut and Mamie. I'll come up with it.
Yeah, and
So
that'll give people to do some research too on their own
yeah,
there as well,
yeah,
which is something I did even after reading the book. I wanted to learn more, and I almost felt I almost Karen, I almost felt a little guilty that I didn't know more, even though it wasn't intentional. Um, I felt like I should have known more about this than I happened to, and that's why I'm
there would
hoping.
be like
And
no way.
yeah, and you mentioned about the girls' professional league. She did apply. I found this out actually today. She applied to play in that, and
Yeah,
they didn't even refuse her. They pretty much just didn't even respond to her. They
nope, they
ignored
didn't
her as if
reply.
as if they weren't even receiving the message when they probably were doing it. So they didn't even dignify her with even a no or a response in some form
Right.
of fashion, which, in my opinion, I feel, it's like at least say no or give a reason why or whatever the case may be, but to like completely ignore. And that's the kind of the obstacles she ran up with at different
Yeah.
points. With different things.
Yep.
And someone will say, "Well, John, maybe this was, we've seen stuff in professional sports, right? Eddie Goodell, the short person who they had
Hmm.
play one game, publicity stunts, if you will. This wasn't a publicity stunt.
No.
She held her own and could play. She batted 243. There's some male players that would love that batting average, comparatively speaking, to maybe what they actually batted. So she held her own. She was pretty good on the defensive side in the infield as well. And so
Yeah.
she played. It wasn't like she played in one game and that was the story. She played, um,
Yep.
and so this is not one of those type of stories where it's a publicity stunt. It's cute, and then that's the end of it, right? She had a passion for it. This was not her. Just I just want to get my name out there. She really didn't even care so much about that as she just loved the game of baseball and wanted to play and didn't want special treatment. You know what I mean? She was playing with in the Negro leagues, like I said, with the Hank Aaron's and Satchel Pages
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. So, um,
Well, and
you go ahead.
and to that end, one of my there are two well, there are three favorite quotes that I have in this book, but one of them is this amazing spread. The artist Laura Freeman, who's spectacular, who illustrated this whole book. This really is a very good likeness of Toni in her later days. The quote here is worked hard for my dream, gave up a lot, but my dream came true playing baseball with the big boys. She said that to her niece. And I got that quote from interviewing her niece.
Yeah,
And on the back of the book, it was very important to me that Toni's family supported this. And that, her niece, Maria Barlow, said, everything in this book is true to the fact it beautifully captures my Aunt Toni's fighting spirit and fierce determination. And so, yeah, she just wanted to play at the level that her skill would allow. And that was the same as the rest of these guys. And it is interesting because you're right. She wanted no special treatment, and no pitchers are gonna not pitch. No pitcher's gonna want her to get a hit off him. So, she played for real and had real stats, and played at second and was spiked high, and went for it. But the way that she was able to wrangle finally a minor league contract so that she could get seen in front of pros was by saying, "Hey, people will come to watch a woman play." And that was a very double-edged sword because it got her where she needed to get to, but it also then meant that she would play for a couple of innings and then get pulled. And then that was a source of frustration for her, that she just assumed that if she made it, that her results would carry and she would get the playing time that she deserved, and that was just really not the case. So it's she was a real player. She played again. Hank Aaron called her a very good baseball player. Ernie Banks said she was so talented. She played with and against all of them, and that's how she got there.
Yeah, and like I said, anyone that knows baseball, 243, 250, that's one out of every four at bats you're getting a hit. And like any pitcher, I'm a former baseball player and a former pitcher, right? I don't want anybody getting a hit off me if I can prevent it, right? I'm sure there was
Yeah,
a little more competitive juices flowing. Again, male ego, male pride, whatever, however you want to word it, right? I don't want a female to get a hit off me, like,
yeah,
and so she probably got the best stuff, and they really kind of probably maybe even bear down on the mound even more so to prevent that from happening. Yet she still batted 240s, 250s, and there's
yeah,
a lot of baseball players that would like that average that don't get that. So and I and reading the book, and you point out how it was frustrating that she'd get a few innings each game, and sometimes not even that, right? Again, her perseverance, right? Someone else would have been like, I'm quitting, or this is,
yep,
and she enjoyed the game enough to even take it in that form, even though that's not, I'm sure it was frustrating for her. She was still part of the game, part of the team enough not to just pack it in, throw a
yep.
glove, go home, throw a glove on the floor, and be done with it. Where I think, maybe 80% of other people would do that, and then no one would really blame them with that sort of treatment, right? And yet she was dedicated, perseverance, right? Grit, words I like to use, and she definitely had that. She had, not only was she a woman trying to break that baseball barrier, but an African American woman. So it was double, double difficult, if you will. The obstacles were twice as much as many others were. Right? And the other thing I took from the story too is, here we have the Negro leagues where they're not allowed to play in the major league at this point, and so they're getting that sort of, you know bias, if you will, and then the league itself is doing that to Tony, like, you can't play with us.
Yeah,
It was sort
exactly.
of like the food chain, it just like
Yep,
two wrongs in the sense there, right? And I
yep,
that wasn't
absolutely.
lost on me either. And did she, in doing the research, did she have, other than herself, did she have any kind of specific player that maybe sort of tried to help her, or not necessarily?
It's interesting. She was a very much a student of the game, and so she would talk on the bus and watching people, like, she wanted to learn how to hit curveballs better. And I don't remember which player she got the advice from, but whoever it was said you need to lean into a curveball. And she would watch and study. So any of the guys that were open to that, she was friendly with. So Willie Mays, when he was 18 and at Pelican Park and being scouted, was somebody that she sat next to and like talked with him about the game, and they talked about who their heroes were and who she studied. I mean, she went to every game in St. Louis that she could go to growing up and, watching all these players. So I'm not sure that there's someone in specific other than, when she finally did get a chance to go to this baseball school because she essentially talked her way into it. Um, the uh, that Gabby Street, who was a major league catcher, um, you know, essentially wanted nothing to do with her. Like, and she just went round and round. She just would not leave. And what's not actually in the book is she had a broken arm while she was doing this. And she just was like, I am just gonna, this is too big of an opportunity for me to pass up. So she talked her way in to getting a chance to play, and he invited her to a baseball school, and at the end for her 15th birthday gave her cleats because she could not go forward in the game wearing just tennis shoes. And all the rest of the white boys that were there had like uniforms and cleats and whatever, and all she had was her 25-cent Goodwill mitt. And he gave her cleats, and that helped her believe she could start barnstorming and find her way into the pros.
Yeah, and again, incredible story, and she made it to the league leagues. Didn't really, we could talk about, which we already have, sort of the treatment there and not playing full games and that sort of thing. But she made it that far, and one of the things too, when you knew you were going to write this was going to be a book for you, did you know, like, for sure, like, this, I got to do this if for children to learn about Toni Stone? Talk about sort of the
Yes,
process
yes, because
to
yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
I really wanted to play baseball, but I did not know as a kid, and the way I grew up, there was no, it wouldn't have, there was no chance for me to do that. But I remember sitting there in softball going, I can throw harder than most of these other kids, and why can't I do that? So for me, the fact that she was undeterred by that was very inspiring. Um, and so I remember when my son first started playing little league, there was one girl in our town, one, who was playing, and I happened to be later friendly with her mom, and I was just like so inspired by what it took for them to do that at that age. I just thought that was amazing. And then it also kind of came back to, while Toni Stone didn't get the recognition that she deserved while she was alive, the fact that she was so determined and just did not let anything stop her is such a great thing for real any person, but for kids in particular. And the quote that really got me was that when in August of 1991, the Cooperstown Baseball, Hall of Fame invited 75 players. They called it was a reunion of the major league players uh, of the Negro Leagues, and there were 74 men and Toni Stone, and they brought them to Cooperstown. They had this whole um, a big event, and what Toni said there is that it breaks my heart. Is I feel highly honored and thanks to all of you guys for seeing I was here. And that is a thing for girls that I think is really important, to feel confident enough to go for your dreams and to then be recognized. And I think all kids have to deal with that. So I wanted it as a kid's book, for that, and also because there was so much sexual discrimination that she faced, that I just think there's a lot of that still goes on, and I think kids need a chance to see that and say, I'm just not going to let the bullying bother me. I'm going to find a way around it. So a coach that wouldn't teach her, literally a church coach would not teach her because she was a girl. So why should he teach her, even though she's one of the best players on the team? So she got a rule book and she learned how to Like, she learned all of the rules to figure out how she could strategize and play better. That's pretty inspiring. So that's why I wanted it to be for kids.
Yeah, that's great. She and like you said, she put in the work, right? She learned the nuances of the game. She picked some legends' brains to, how do I do this better? How do I do that better? What do you recommend? And it is true. I coach youth. I coach high school varsity baseball. I coached youth baseball. And even coaching my son, we had a female on our little league team that I coach, and she was every bit as good as most of the boys on the team. So good, in fact, that she wound up playing Division 1 softball, as you mentioned.
That's what happens.
We're just the way the lay of the land, or the way it's sort of presented to. But there's no doubt in my mind, if she wanted to, Karen, she could have played baseball. She didn't have to
Yeah.
play softball. She was that athletic, but just her path to a free college education wound up being
Yep.
playing Division 1 softball. So don't cry for me. But I think had she wanted to play baseball, I coached her. There's no doubt in my mind that she could have taken that path, but it really wasn't. Even all the even in modern times, even this is in
Hmm.
2010s, if you will. That
Yep.
opportunity still really wasn't there, like it really needs to be or should be. I like to, and you touched on this too. I like that you did this as a children's book, because I think even as adults, like we can read something and we'll remember, right? But kids at that age, they're impressionable, and there's so many lessons here of dedication, of persevering, of going after what you want to do, your dreams, chasing your dreams. Yes, it's not going to be smooth sailing. There's going to be rough waters sometimes, or many times, and you can get through it. I think there's a lot of lessons that can be learned from Toni Stone in the book, and who better, to learn the lessons at a younger age. I think we're better prepared in life. If I knew the stuff that I know now as a younger kid, I'd probably be even better off, right? So I think
Yeah, sure.
getting that message out to impression, I think it's important. It wasn't lost on me that this is a story that needs to be told, and I'm sure there are other stories that need to be told. But even this one, and it's not just a sports story. This transcends past baseball. That if you want something, go for it. Don't let people tell you no. Don't
Hmm.
you know? You have to hear no a lot of times, and even still, then there's ways to get through it. There's always a way, somehow, some way, and I'm glad that
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, on that note, I just want to mention that there is a girl, Olivia Picardo, who's playing right now at Brown. So, things are changing, but you're
Yeah,
right. Where the money is,
yeah.
yeah. So that's a whole different thing. But I also wanted to mention that Tony Stone is inspiring some younger women right now. One of the things that I loved was that Monet Davis, who again, pitched in the 2014 Little League World Series, Monet Davis took there's video. It was a little hard to find, but there's video of Tony Stone talking about playing and on a ball field, and she did a voiceover of Tony's story. And it's on my website, which is KarenSwanson.com. If you go on there, you'll find the Monet. It's only on Twitter, and I don't know how to tell you how to find it on Twitter. You can go to Monet Davis's feed and figure it out. But you can also just find it on my website. But it's so inspiring to me that Tony's story inspired somebody like Monet to then go ahead and say, like, do this voiceover video with live shots of Tony, playing it. It is just really cool.
And it's nice the fact that Monet sort of respected that past, right? You hear
Yeah.
contemporaries always say, if it wasn't for so and so or so and so's, right, I wouldn't be here today, and they honor sort of that path. I'm a history
Yes.
guy, so that means a lot to me. I don't care what you do, whether it be baseball, profession, author, scientist, right? We're
Yep.
where we are today because of the accomplishments of people in that space before us that advanced that aspect forward. And it's nice when people acknowledge that. And in this case, Monet, doing that.
Yeah.
And here she is young at that time herself. She could have easily said, like, I don't know who Toni Stone is.
Yeah.
And however she
Yeah.
found out,
I
it's
know.
really indifferent. It's the fact that she knew and paid her respects in her way to someone who sort of laid the bridge and foundation down for her to play. And you know, it's always nice to see that whenever it does happen in whatever sports, not sports, whatever those moments
Yep.
arise. One of the things, it's bittersweet when I know I talked a little bit about this before we started recording too. She's had some post-career accolades and honors, but many of them came after she was no longer with us. And
Yep.
on one hand, while it's nice that she's being recognized, I also felt sad too that she wasn't here to enjoy those honors and accolades. Just talk a little bit about some of those and your feelings as well with that.
Yeah, I mean that is sad. Though I'm so I mean, I guess it happens not infrequently, right? So, you think of artists and so on where that happens, where they become famous after their death. But, at least there were a couple of things, that happened before she died. And I'm just kind of looking at my timeline. She was inducted into the Women's Sports Hall of Fame in 1993, so 3 years before she died. So there was at least that. She was invited to throw out the first pitch at a game. I can't remember exactly when, but meanwhile, on the jumbotron, they spelled her name Tony, which just is amazing to me. Um, the August 1991, from what I could read from that and hear, that meant so much to her that she was seen and recognized with the 74 other major league players. So there were at least some, not as much as there should have been, but there were at least some. And then, the city of St. Paul did change, the name of Dunning Field, where she played pickup ball, to Toni Stone Field, but that was after she died. So, and she was inducted into the Minneapolis Sports Hall of Fame in 2021. So again, she died in 1996. So there was some, but she did actually get a chance to go in, and she loved kids, and she would go in and she coached teams into her 60s, like local Oakland baseball boys teams. And there are, sports stories about her, going in and sitting with kids and talking about baseball and fighting for what you want. So there's some of that too.
Yeah, it's great. Again, it would have been nice maybe some of that happening maybe sooner, but better,
Yeah.
as the saying goes, right? Better late than never, and it's still keeping her name out there in some respect, and maybe someone who doesn't know sees the field named after her or is visiting that Hall of Fame and sees her in there, and
Yeah.
then that starts the process of who is
Yeah.
this person? Why are they here? Or why is this named after her? And it gets that ball rolling again. And then, more people can learn about, her accomplishments, her perseverance, dedication. And like you said, she coached. If you didn't think she loved baseball, she coached even after she was done playing. And so,
Yeah.
she never really gave it up and until she passed away. So she
Yeah.
loved the sport. She loved the game. And I think her actions definitely illustrate that. Now
Yeah.
writing a children's book for you, has that opened up your mindset as far as like I want to do this more? I want, is this something, I'm going to put you on the spot here, so to speak. Is this something that,
It,
that I know wrote a book before this, but, never of this ilk. Does this open up a new avenue for you to do? Because you did, listen, you don't need me to tell you this, but I already have on and off the air. So a wonderful, terrific book. Does, you know, do now you say, hey, I can do this? Not that you doubted yourself before, but as they say, the proof's in the pudding, right? It's an accomplished work. Does this open that avenue for you? Like, hey, I want to do more of this, or maybe recognize some people who, you know, aren't being recognized enough, if you will.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And a lot of it has to do with the business of book publishing, right? I spent my career in actual business marketing. Like I worked at Procter and Gamble. I did not always intend to be a writer, and the smart thing for me to do, because this book has gotten very good reviews, and was just reviewed in the New York Times Book Review, and I'm having people like you talking to me. The smart thing for me to do business wise is to write another picture book biography, because that's where my mojo is going right now. So the thing that's funny about that is that how I got my agent was with a young adult fiction book, which is usually more of what I like to write. So the dilemma for me is this is terrible to say, but I was not great with history, and I'm always afraid I'm going to get the dates wrong, or everything has to be accurate. In a book, that's okay because I have time to make sure it's okay. But I prefer a little bit of fiction because I don't have to be as worried about that. So on the flip side, though, you make a really good point. It is it is important to look at art accomplishments of people who maybe haven't been acknowledged well enough. So I was looking at a story about the Dust Bowl girls who played basketball, and it's a little hard to find stories that are people don't know so much about, but there's enough actual primary research and data to be able, because it has to have content. And so I am debating like what kind of story could I do next. And I do really love sports, and there were times in this book where like there's something here she went yard, and my editor is like, what? I'm like, baseball people will know, like that's a thing. And literally they were fighting me on this, and I'm like, okay, we just have to agree to disagree on this. So I might want to do a little bit more sports, because they're as girls, and women, I do know. I played a lot of sports. I know how to talk about sports, so that might be a fun thing for me to do as well. But I'm working on it. So
Yeah, and there's no timetable, right? You set your kind of own timetable if and when you decide to go down that path again.
yeah,
Again, you did such a terrific job,
thank
with this
you.
book. And for those listening out there, I'll hold it up again too. It's called "Swinging into History." I'll cover my ugly mug up here. It's about Toni Stone, and if you don't, I knew very little bit about her. More or less, I heard about her, kind of knew about her on the surface, and even being a children's book, Karen, like I said already, it really filled in a lot of blanks. I learned more, and then it made me even want to learn more and more about her. And even, I'd love to see whether it be a feature film or even a documentary, right? Or
Yep.
even again, you mentioned the artists and the illustrations, which are great. Maybe even kind of an animated documentary, if you will, as well, or something along
Yeah.
those lines. There's a
And
lot of different ways and things that can be done to maybe get Tony's story out there
yeah,
even
she
more.
she
But
was a Google
yeah,
Doodle.
yeah. Oh, really?
She was
Yeah,
a book,
that's
yeah, which was very cool. So there is an illustrator besides the wonderful illustrator who did this book, but there was one who did a Google Doodle of Toni, which was amazing. Um, but yeah, I'm with you that there are certainly a lot of possibilities. So
yep. And I think a lot of kids are going to read this book. Yet I'm sure some have already, but even more, and they're going to learn some stuff, not just about Toni, but maybe about even themselves and things that they didn't think were possible, and it will open up some of their doors and their way of thinking to persevere. And if you really want something, don't take no for an answer, and go
yes,
get it. Including, it's a great. Not that I'm advocating don't listen to your parents, kids, right? Your parents have usually your best interest at heart, but in this case, like her own parents didn't want her to play. More, I think they were worried about her and some of the stuff she'd run into. But she didn't even let that stop her, right? So I'm not even. I don't
right.
want to come across as don't listen to your parents, kids. But if you really want to do something that you enjoy, you're passionate, you're good at, uh, you know, follow your dreams. I guess is the best way
Yes, and to be
to
clear,
put it.
she did listen to her parents. They wanted her to do figure skating. So she
Yeah,
did. She did all the things that they wanted her to do. She worked in their barbershop. She did all of the things she was supposed to do. And then as
plus,
soon as
but
she was done, she went out to
yeah.
the baseball field, and that's where they couldn't stop her. So
Yep, yep. So and again, I'm sure she was tired many of those days, and yet she put on the cleats, the glove, and followed her passion and followed her dreams, and did make a name for herself. Some of it posthumously, but even before that, and we're talking about her today, and I think that tells you a lot. Right there. Well, I appreciate you, Karen, making some time for us and telling that story and getting that story out there where I think it needs to be. I always give the guests sort of the final word. Plug anything you want, website, what you're doing, what's coming, social media, anything. There's no time limit. Take your time, get that information out there for folks.
great. Well, the best way to find out a little bit more information and or links to buying the book is to go to my website, which is very easy. It's Karen L, like Lynn, KarenLSwanson.com. And if you want to see the amazing Monet Davis, that's on my tab called News and Reviews. It's from February 6th, 2024. It was originally at MLB Develops. There is an educator's guide. So if you want to teach, anybody that wants to teach or learn more about this, there's a whole discussion guide that's on my website. And I'm also on Facebook and Insta, like on Insta and Twitter now X. I'm at Karen L Swanson, so you can find me there as well. But the easiest thing is KarenLSwanson.com. So
And I'll put that just for people listening. If you didn't catch that, I'll put that in the show notes as well. So you can go to the show notes, click the link, and away you go. So,
thank you.
well, thanks again, Karen. Thank you for telling the story and an important one, obviously. And it's not a sports story, right? This is a life story. And
Yeah,
while it's centered around baseball, there's a lot of lessons that can be taken from Toni's dedication and perseverance and going out there and following a passion of things she wanted to do, and she even did it again, like we said, post playing career as a coach, and duly honored in some respects with the field she played on being now named for Cooperstown, having her be there with some of the other Negro Leaguers as well, and but
yep,
more people need to know. I think it's important. And again, I think it transcends beyond the sport of baseball. This is about life and following your dreams and going after what you want to accomplish. So I think
Yeah.
you don't have to be a baseball fan. You have to be a fan of life and people. And I think it's a tremendous book. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.